Seton Hall is going through many different changes, none bigger than the restructure plan that is combining multiple colleges across the university to the dismay of many students and some faculty as well. To help us make sense of it all, we talked to SGA president and provost and a whole bunch of students here on Seton Hall campuses for Pirate TV and WSOU News.
I guess recently I've learned that they're collapsing a bunch of these different schools into just one centralized kind of school, or at least a few of them. Sounds kind of weird. I don't understand exactly what the benefits of doing that would be for the students, or if maybe there's a benefit for I don't know, the business end of the school, like them making money or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't sound good for the students. It sounds like they're just being lumped into a group, and I think the different schools that they have now provide some specialization in the field that they want to go into.
Yeah, so some of these restructuring changes are kind of bewildering to me. I don't see what the College of Education and Communication Arts really have to do with each other. I don't see why they would need to be together in the same school when they've been operating fine on their own. And moreover, I worry that this will lead to a situation where you have these two schools combined, and that leads to resources being leads them having to compete for resources with one another. I feel like most students felt blindsided by this, especially in the schools that are actually being affected by it, because we weren't represented. We weren't really involved in that decision-making process. And beyond that, I don't see, beyond just the necessity of merging these schools, I don't even know if it's the right position. There's been a lack of communication with the student body about this. We not only did we not really have significant input, but we didn't have significant knowledge of it beforehand. This was just kind of sprung on us in an email one day. I don't really think that's fair.
I personally am not affected by it because I am a business student, but I have a bunch of friends who are in the Comm Arts and Education program, and they're really not happy about it because it's just they signed up for one thing. They signed up to be in the school of Comm Arts, or they signed up to be in the education school. So for them to have their diploma say something completely different from what they signed up for is really disappointing to them, and I feel really bad for them, especially because a lot of the programs like education and Comm Arts sometimes don't overlap a lot. So it doesn't structurally it doesn't make sense to me with there being very little overlap with curriculum. Why there would be two schools in one, two very different schools in one.
I think the problem is the school kind of treats colleges like a business when it should be treating them as schools, because it is a college, right? So maybe they should stop focusing on the money and maybe focus on resources and how it benefits the students instead of how it benefits the funds the college has or something. I think there's certain ways they can kind of collaborate and get together, share resources, share programs and stuff. So that could work out. I guess we just gotta see what actually happens.
To better explain the changes coming with the restructure plan and the process of which it came to be, WSU's news director Veronica Gale sat down with Seton Hall's provost and other high-ranking faculty members.
I see this really being able to benefit students in the long run. I think us as students, we think about what is the plan, what does this change mean for our 4 years at Seton Hall? I think for the immediate future, this is going to be a very difficult change for us all to adjust with, but in the long term, will be very beneficial. For example, School of Diplomacy partnering with the law school. A lot of diplomacy students have aspirations to go to law school. If the diplomacy college and the law school are able to partner more, that ultimately benefits the diplomacy students if they're taking colleges at the law school, if they are participating in legal organizations. That's wonderful. In the interim, the transition can be difficult. I think the doors that will be open to students, and because of this new window in funding, for example, one thing I discussed with our provost is increasing the number of graduate programs within education and Comm Arts that they're now able to invest in because of the colleges combining. As part of my position as student government president, I serve on the ISC committee, which is the Implementation Steering Committee. I am the student representative. Myself, along with my executive board of SGA, we met with the provost, Dr. Passerini. We met with the vice president of student services and our advisor to go over in detail what the restructuring plan meant. And essentially, when we had this conversation, my immediate response before it was released to the public, once the information was released to me, was that I think that students at first are going to be very opposed to this. And they were. Students were very confused. They were very upset as to what this meant for them as students. I think that that's something I've noticed that is very common when the university has released any major changes, is students' immediate response is, all right, well, what does this mean for me in my studies? What does this mean for, my graduation? Anything like that. What does this mean for me? And I think that once that was announced, students were very upset. My immediate response was then at our next implementation steering committee, and when I met with the provost, I did address these concerns, but more or less from the lens of communication. Because in our informal conversation with the provost, she highlighted a lot of things to me and SGA that weren't necessarily communicated in this larger email. Because of course the university has to use very specific and formal language. So when we're speaking more informally, I was able to get a lot of insights that I think that students would benefit from. So I think that ultimately the concerns that were brought to students came back to me. I addressed it to the provost, and we were able to include that because when the provost and the Seeds of Innovation plan, when it was announced to the public, there was a period of time between its announcement to where feedback was welcomed. So this meant that the provost met with each of the colleges, met with the faculty senate, met with SGA, and met with different areas of the campus community to gather feedback and to decide whether or not these different colleges would endorse the plan, the Seeds of Innovation plan, or not. So during that time was when myself and the provost worked together to make sure student concerns were addressed. So essentially with the concerns that were brought to me, a lot of them had to deal with, all right, well, what does this mean for my major? For example, for the education majors, does this mean I need to take communication classes because now the colleges have combined? Does this mean that I'm going to lose, my advisor, my professor, a lot of people that the students really rely on? What does this mean for me? Was a lot of the student concerns that I got. And I think a lot of those concerns were able to be addressed simply by understanding the intricacies and idiosyncrasies of the plan. Because I think students heard a lot of what was in the Seeds of Innovation plan through other students, through news sources, and through their professors, not from actually reading through the plan itself or reading in depth the emails that the university put out regarding the Seeds of Innovation plan. It's a consolidation of resources and a reapportionment of funds so that there's more availability for communication and arts and education for funding opportunities. So it's not downsizing, so you're not downsizing the departments, you're not downsizing professors, you're not downsizing the opportunities that students are going to have. If anything, this increases the opportunities that students are going to have.